Buenas tardes a todos. Muchas gracias.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being once again with us on this webinar cycle. Today, we will be sharing 5 tips to release quality with speed using GXtest. GXtest is an automation tool for testing, and that will give you added value and will give you quality for continuous delivery and continuous integration, and will make your developments more productive. This webinar is going to be given by Mariana Falabrino. She works with the Abstractor team. Abstractor is one of our partners at GeneXus, and I would also like to tell you that we are inviting a lot of people in general to become a partner at GeneXus. So if you're interested in becoming a partner, the only thing you need to do is to send me an email. Without further ado, I would like to remind you that we have simultaneous interpretation into English and Portuguese. And if you want to have access to the interpretation feature, you need to click on the interpretation icon in the bottom part of your screen. Now we'll move on to the presentation. As usual, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A session. So now, yes, without further ado, I'll leave you with Mariana. Go ahead, Mariana. Thank you so much, Aníbal, for the presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar. My idea is to give you the 5 most basic tips so that you can automate your testing in your platforms and your systems, and to improve your delivery speed without disregarding quality. VUSI is it's a Uruguayan entity that basically processes more than 400,000 documents of citizens. It's connected to 95 governmental and non-governmental agencies, and it's a system that operates with foreign commerce systems from Chile, Vietnam, Brazil, Israel, Russia, and Argentina. By automating these testing development process, they reduced the delivery speed of application by 5 times. And on today's webinar, I'm going to share with you the 5 initial tips so that you can increase your delivery speed, just like VUSE in Uruguay did. So first of all, we're going to talk about the type of tests that are available in GeneXus, the 5 tips to improve your delivery speed. And we're going to see an example for an e-banking sample app. In your GeneXus IDE, you have different kinds of tests that you can use to automate the different development layers in your application. You will develop tests on the logical layer, the service layer, and the interface layer. Theoretically, we would recommend you to follow the automation testing pyramid, which recommends to have a solid unit test base, because this is the kind of test that runs fast and they're not so expensive in terms of maintenance. And on top of that base, you can develop your services or REST tests and the interface tests. And then at the very end, at the top of the pyramid, you will have a manual tests for flows that cannot be automated. In practice, the decision of what kind of test you're talking about may diverge a bit from theory, because each application is going to have its own peculiarity. The kind of test that you're going to be automating will depend on the features of that application and on how it is structured and programmed in terms of its knowledge base. Some KBs will have automated testing at unit level. Some will have automated tests that is strongly targeted at services, some others at the interface layer, and some others will be a combination of all the previous ones. So with the following tips, you will be able to identify what you need for each KB and how to optimize these tests. So my first tip is to start by identifying the most critical feature for the system. You all know which the most critical features are and the ones that cannot fail when it comes to releasing a new version to our end client. So in the case of that feature, it's the first ones that you should automate. And I would recommend you to start with a happy case of the most valuable and most critical feature in your system. This steps requires a number of steps. It requires you to write a list of all the critical features that the application has. It also requires you to select the most critical feature, that is where you're going to start. And also you need to identify the layers where the feature is implemented, for example, by identifying the logic objects of your application's core and the respective validations, identifying the services, the most critical ones, and all the validations that you need to have as well, and to identify the happy path and its respective validations. We recommend you to do this with the most critical feature of that list that you came up with. Then you need to be able to implement tests with the respective validations. GXtest is going to generate a script on the tests, and this will make this construction process much easier. The next tip is associated with the selection of the right test data. For the test to be successful, it is necessary to use data that can be reused in the next time. So for this, you have three options. First, you can use a mock database, which will allow you to abstract from the database and to remember the database status automatically. It's very easy to use. You just need to right-click on a test, and you can capture all the data, and you will be saving that so that you can use it the next time you run it. You can also use reusable data which are exclusive to run these tests. And finally, you can have a setup procedure for the state of your database before you run. On GXtests, this is typically configured in the T Suite object. One of the most relevant tips when it comes to improving our speed and the quality of our application is to measure and improve coverage in our KB. So what we're going to do for this is to enable the test coverage property in our KB, and we're going to run all our tests with this property, this test coverage property activated to see what is the coverage of our tests. In this way, we will be able to gauge the coverage to know if this is an exhaustive, a thorough test, or if it's just a shallow, superficial kind of test. And you will see the amount of code that you're covering with that test, and to generate the missing cases so that you can have a total coverage that will validate your feature. It's important to take into account that the bigger the coverage is for your KB, the more data you will have on the health status of your application before you deliver it to the end customer, and you will be speeding up the process. So the greater the coverage, the more data and the faster that you will be able to deliver. The other tip, which I think is also important, is to be able to run the same tests on the different environments. So tests are thought to be to have a multi-environment execution. So this test that you're going to develop, you can use it throughout the different environments and throughout the life cycle of your application. At first, the test execution is going to be in the local development environment, and then you will be executing it on testing environments and pre-production environments. This execution scheme will depend on the development cycle for your application, because it's not the same for every case, but You will all have to execute the tests in as many environments as you can to get the most feedback available from all the different test environments. So this is going to help you to reduce bug reparation costs, and you're going to get some feedback on the health status of your features every time that you deploy. At the moment, we are working to release a feature that will include tests in deployment units. And finally, the benefit of tests is exponential when they are integrated in a continuous integration pipeline. This means that all the code is going to be integrated on GX server, and every time that you impact the changes of the developers, you're going to be executing the tests in the integration server. That's going to give you immediate feedback to the build of the application, and also an immediate feedback to the deploy stage of that application. And this is going to allow you to run parallel tests on MS build, which is going to make the validation process faster. So following these 5 tips, you will be able to approach agile methodologies and to release with greater speed and quality and added value to your end customers. So let's assume that we are developing an e-banking sample application. This is a small model of a banking system that manages accounts and transfers. This e-banking application was implemented just for this demo. So let's assume that this e-banking application is being developed. And then we will try to apply a few of the tips that we have seen before to understand how to put them into practice in real life. First thing we need to do is detect the most critical feature that we have in our application. In this case, it's the do transfer function. This feature is implemented at several levels. On the one hand, you can do them through the interface, and also you can do them through a service that is exposed as a REST service. So we will automate the feature in all its layers. Another step that I was mentioning was to identify the layers and the validations for each case. So in this case, the do transfer function is logically developed through a check balance for transfer procedure that approves or rejects a transfer when this transfer is created from the interface. So you want to automate the test for this procedure, creating a unit test that is going to be called check balance for transfer unit test, which is the bottom layer in your pyramid. In this kind of test, you can do data mocking to become independent from the environment so that you don't need to set up the scenario every single time. And in my case, and in the example that I'll be sharing with you, what I did was to use data which are specifically for tests. So I'm going to be using accounts number 5 and number 6 that will be just for testing. Then we're going to try the do transfer service, where you can make a transfer by summoning this service, and where you're going to create a do transfer REST test. Typically, you're going to automate all the tests for those services that are used by third parties. And then I'm going to create a test for validation at interface level on these web panels that it's going to be called web transfer. And this test is going to verify the integration of the different web panels and values at interface level. So the web interface test can be implemented with panels that are generated with any pattern like Work with Plus, Fiori, amongst others. And so once you have the layers of the features that you want to automate and the validations that you're going to make, what you now do is you build them into the IDE. In this case, what I'm going to do is to create a unit test for the check balance for transfer procedure. This procedure has a few conditions, and it's going to create a unit test object as a template. So GeneXus and GXtest is going to create some automatic validations on the output parameters, and you can add some validations as well at a database level. This is an editable object, and the template makes it faster to create. The test data are going to be in the data provider, so those test data that you want to use for this function. And to run it, you're going to right click, then run test, and you're going to be executing these test data, and we're going to be seeing the results on the results panel. As I was saying, it's important to use the test coverage feature to see whether or not our test is being thorough, exhaustive, or just superficial. So we activate the property, and we need to run it with this property enabled, and you're going to see the coverage of the test. So in this case, you see that it has a 100% coverage. It's going through all the different lines of the process, but it could happen that you need to add a new test case, so that you can have maximum coverage. Then I'm going to implement the test on the REST service that has 3 input parameters and 1 output parameter. And GXtest is going to generate the validations automatically for output parameters. But as I was saying, in the case of REST test, it's also going to generate an automatic validation for the different status code of the service. But all the validations that you need to add to make your tests more robust, you will be able to do it, and that's going to be done in GeneXus code. As GeneXus developers, this is going to have 0 complications for you in terms of adding validations at database level for all the tests that you need. And this is part of the analysis that you need to do in terms of the validations that each test needs. In this case, in this demo, I'm not adding any validations on the database, but I think it's important to tell you that it's relevant that you think of the validations that you want to have on the base when you're running these objects. So I'm gonna run the tests, and I'm gonna see the results in the results panel. As I was saying, in this case, I'm not using database mocking. So what I did is I'm just working with accounts number 5 and number 6 for testing scenarios, testing cases. Okay, so here we're running the REST test. And here we have a history. We can also export the execution history, and we can export the results and some other features that you will find in the documentation that could come in handy to just speed up the processes. Now I'm going to implement a test at interface level with GXtest. And remember that what I'm going to do is to generate the GeneXus code script very quickly while I am executing the case that I want to automate in the application. So I'm going to record a test that is going to do a transfer. This is going to be from account 5 to account 6. Sorry, from 6 to 5. And then the validations of this test are going to be going to each account and seeing the impact on the balance after the transfer. Okay, I'm adding this with GXtest recorded, and then I log out. As you see, I have all the commands already recorded and a script in GeneXus code to import to the IDE and to have the test to be executed both locally and in other environments. So what I'm doing now is I'm creating the web test, the web transfer test. Then I'm pasting the code generated by GXtest recorded. Remember that that is a GeneXus code at interface level for test automation. And this code has a driver variable, and that variable is going to help us to manage the actions on the browser. And we are going to add a screenshot in the balance panel so that we have it for when the test is executed. If it fails, or just to have it as documentation in general, and to see that indeed balances changed. So when it goes through that panel, it will take a screenshot and it will automatically save it. So this test can be executed from the local environment, as I was telling you, and we suggest is that you execute these tests in the local environment, but typically the interface test, unit tests, and service tests, it makes more sense to execute them in the local environment. Interface tests, even though they may be executed locally, it is more common to execute them in the testing environment when you're deploying the whole application, because it takes a while to run, so it makes more sense to execute it in the QA environment. Okay, so you need to reproduce the flow that you're recording. You have the validations automatically, and you will see the results in the results panel. You will have a history, the browser where it was executed, and also a screenshot so that you can quickly have access to it and have the view of the application. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is that the execution of these tests in a continuous integration server. So this e-banking application has a Jenkins that is set up, that is listening to GX server. And every single time that a developer impacts any changes on GX server, Jenkins will trigger this sequence of steps that are configured, and that's going to be automatic. Okay, so this is a key point to deliver with greater speed. Having your tests, well, to have a Jenkins that will automate these steps, and it will have the tests that will be executing on the integration server. That's going to allow you to have early feedback on the health status of our application, which is after build and after deploy. This implies a methodological shift for developers to run their tests not only locally, but they do this before committing, so that you can catch any bugs or imperfections that could result from these changes that you're making on the IDE. So running these tests before you commit, and once you do that, to run these tests again, which is what I was saying, executing it in this multi-environment scenario. So let's see how this integration server works. So how to set it up, you can find that in the documentation. And what I'm going to show you is how it works once it is already configured. So as a developer, you're going to make a change in the KB. In this case, you make a comment on a procedure. You make the change, and you're going to impact those changes on GX server. So Jenkins will be listening to this, and it will integrate these changes into the integration server. So these changes that were committed by a developer are integrated, and now they are subjected to tests. And in this case, because of the kind of tests that we have and the test cases that we have, the conditional that I commented is going to be that the cases of transfers with a negative balance will not be approved. And now, because I made a comment to that conditional, they should be approved. So these tests supposedly are going to be failing. As you can see, Jenkins triggered this step sequence because it detected that there is a change on GX server. And it's triggering the build for this application, also the update, so that you can reflect these changes in the integration server. It's also triggering the build. And in this case, we are talking about the same environment where everything is deployed. So it is going to execute the tests in this environment. So as I was saying, it is in this bit of things where the benefit of these tests is going to be exponential. You're going to get immediate feedback on how the changes that you made before are impacting as a developer, how they are impacting the status of the application. And this is going to allow you to reduce the number of hours of testing and bug repairs and stuff, and to deliver more frequently while guaranteeing the trust of your customers in your team. It will also allow you to maximize the quality of your deliveries. So that's why it's important to start with the most critical flow and to set up this scheme, even though it may be with the automated tests of the most critical or the 2-3 most critical flows that you have, that you can have that implemented and running on the different environments for the life cycle of your software. So in the Jenkins log, you will see this record of everything that happened automatically. As you can see, you're running interface tests and the different commands, and you're going to get reports with the testing results. So as I was saying, the cases that we had already programmed so that those transfers with a negative balance sheet will fail. Now, after the comment that I made, those tests are going to fail because the cases will be approved. So we're going to find out very, very soon. What this is trying to simulate is, in the real case scenario, what's going to happen is that developers will be impacting changes. Each developer is going to be impacting on a module or feature, whatever it is that they're working on. And it's going to integrate all these changes, and it will tell us how the features, the most critical features and the riskiest features will be working because they need to be working well for end customer. So what you get is the chance to see these tests in two different ways. On the one hand, with this Blue Ocean plugin that you see with the JUnit format, you see the tests and the cases that failed exclusively. And then what we suggest is that you use the Allure framework, which is a bit more thorough. You can see the different validations that fail and also the ones that do pass the tests. You have a history. You can see the different screenshots very quickly in the same report. In this case, the pipeline was configured from GX server. So you have an option on GX server to create the pipeline and configure it from there. And all this is documented in the wiki. You can totally find it if you need it. And we also have a course where one of the modules actually explains how to set this all up. So to wrap up, I would like to tell you that Action Point, which is a software factory that many of you must know, that implements the Bantotal banking core. They managed to configure this development process to impact the changes in an integration development and in the different environments of the development cycle, thus speeding up their processes and ensuring the maximum quality in their deliveries. During last year, we put together a support plan with Action Point, and we provided them with support throughout the testing and pipeline construction process. So if you would like to do something similar, do reach me. This is my email if you want to reach out. And yeah, if you just want to find a way in which it could help you out and help you to approach these agile methodologies that will allow you to deliver with greater speed and quality to your end customers. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. And now we are moving on to the Q&A session with Aníbal, I guess. Thank you so much, Mariana. Great presentation. As you said, now we are moving on to the Q&A session. So do feel free to just raise your hands and you can speak out loud. Elias, I don't know if you want to ask something. Yes, hey, good afternoon. Hey, good afternoon. How are you? Doing great. Thank you. Great event. Thank you so much. Okay, let me ask you something. At the moment, we are using GeneXus 17 upgrade 6, and in the QA environment, we are deploying through Jenkins onto the Azure cloud. So that we've been doing that for a while, and we get immediate results and expected results. But what's missing, I think, is these unit tests that you were telling us about. But I think that maybe we have very complex processes, very large processes, actually. And so my question is, if to get the most out of it, we should demodularize the processes, which is what the way I understood it, mainly to be able to execute these unit tests. Okay, so we need to take a look at the specific cases. I think it is. I think it's a good practice for you to modularize and have your tests as atomic as possible, and also to have integration level tests. And I would like to talk about your case in particular, perhaps just take a look at your case and to give you more adapted and accurate answer. But yeah, for starters, I would say that, yeah, you can absolutely do this by modularizing it and having like atomic tests. But all of this, of course, with unit tests, which is the first thing that you're going to execute in the development cycle and the fastest thing to do and the least expensive thing to maintain. Yeah, great, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Elias. Sorry, Elias, where are you contacting us from? From Rosario, from the Hollister company. Okay, great. Any other questions? Anything else that you would like to ask Mariana? We have Miguel Solano. Miguel, go ahead. Hey, good afternoon. I'm joining you from Costa Rica. Quick one. Would it be difficult to work with the scripts part that you mentioned with Work with Plus? Because I did some tests with it and I think they failed, but I don't know if it was because I was using Work with Plus. Hey, Miguel, great to meet you. No, I don't think it's because you have Work with Plus. Maybe there is, if they fail. Did you try executing them on the IDE? Yeah, we did that on the IDE. I executed the script to create testing object and for a unit test, and I started having issues with the driver part. Yeah, the more technical team is going to be answering. Hey guys, I don't know if you can see me. My name is Fabian. Sorry, you're telling me that you created a unit test or a UI test? Okay, a UI test. Okay, yeah, I understood. Unit test. Listen, you shouldn't have any trouble. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it still exists, but in the previous versions of Work with Plus, you could right click on the pattern and you didn't even need to record the test. It was automatically generated. So you shouldn't have any trouble with Work with Plus or any other. Even it will work with non-GeneXus applications. If you go to google.com and you run a search and you record a test and you want to reproduce that, you shouldn't have any problems. Yeah, it was failing when I had to choose what Work with Plus was generating. Yeah, that's a very typical error that you're recording something and then when you want to play it, it won't work. There's a whole craft in learning which is the right control. Because the recorder will give you one default option, but you have 10 different ways to get to that element. So sometimes what you got to do is to say, okay, this command is not going to work with this path is not working, so you need to do that on the ID. But listen, if you want, you can send us the issue and our team will take a look at it. Yes, I was actually going to say that it would be interesting to see where you got stuck, Miguel. So maybe it is just the selector, the component selector that you're choosing. Yes, that was my question, if it was Word with Plus. No, yeah, but it's about the selector, okay, that you may need to change it because now in the last version, we added an option that allows you to record with control name references. So we should take a look at the specific case, but yeah, you shouldn't have any issues. Actually, there are applications, automated applications that were developed with Work with Plus, and they're running just well. So if you can, just do send us an email, and we will be in touch, and we can take a look at that on a call. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Perfecto.
Great.
Muchas gracias. Tenemos
Thank you so
a
much.
Leonardo.
We have Leonardo.
A ver, Leonardo. Un segundo que
Just
cargue
give me a
esto.
second.
Ahora sí.
Now, yep. Leonardo,
¿Puedes habilitar
you
el
can
micrófono?
open your mic.
Foi. Boa tarde, tudo bem?
Hello, how are
Welcome
you?
to
Good
GeneXus.
afternoon.
Tudo bem.
Buenas tardes, ¿todo
I am
bien?
from
Yo soy de
Brazil.
Brasil y
I am
actualmente
working with
estoy con una
SEX,
empresa que se llama
SESC, which is a company that uses GeneXus just for development. And I have two
Tengo
doubts.
dos dudas.
The first one,
La
which is what is the
¿cuál
biggest
es la gran
differential,
diferencia
in your
para
opinion,
ustedes entre
when you
la
compare
opción
this
o
to
otras
other
herramientas
automation
de
tools? For
automatización? Es decir,
example,
por ejemplo, yo
I've used
utilizo
Selenium
el
and I
idioma,
was
por
working with
ejemplo.
its feature,
Entonces, para ser ejecutadas las
but
acciones,
maybe
puedo
using
usar
another tool.
otras herramientas en el site. Por
What do you
ejemplo,
think would be the biggest
¿qué consideran
differential
con
in
mayor
this case from
diferencial para el
for
producto
GXtest?
exactamente?
Okay, Fabian is going to be answering because he speaks a bit more Portuguese than I do. Okay, Leo, listen, there is an article on the wiki that basically compares GXtest with other tools, but in summary, first, GXtest is integrated into the IDE and it's for GeneXus teams. So if your team knows how to work with Python, then probably you will choose a tool that will be friendly for Python users. GXtest, I would say that the biggest part of it is that it's for GeneXus teams. Then if you compare it with Cypress, Selenium, or any other, there is a lot of differences. Actually, GXtest was born because the automated the automating teams were using Selenium and they had so many challenges, and that is why GXtest came to be. So that is if you're just comparing it in terms of UI automation, but with Selenium you cannot test a GeneXus product. With JMeter or Cypress or any of those open source tools, they will not allow you to validate a GeneXus product. You cannot, for example, manage your tests or your data together with your KB. if you want your KB to evolve together with your tests, and every time that you modify a procedure, you want to run all the unit tests and all those service tests related to that object, you're not going to be able to do it, or you're not going to know which one it is, or you're going to have to run all the tests. So comparing UI to UI, I think that the biggest difference is that it's designed for GeneXus teams in a GeneXus language within the GeneXus KB. And then if you compare it with all the other testing practices that you may need to apply, such as unit tests or service tests and so on and so forth, first, you will not be able to do it. And the second thing is that you will not be able to validate data or to have database mocking and all the other things that Mariana mentioned during the presentation. I don't know if it's clear or if you would like to ask me something else. I'm here.
ficou claro
No,
agora.
that was very clear. Thank you so much. It was just to understand that it's really integrated for GeneXus development. My other question that I would like to ask you is, when you're going to automate, you need your own infrastructure in, we need our own infrastructure in our company. So does GXtest offer anything like that for us to work in our environment? I see that she was using Jenkins and running all the tests in a second plane. So yeah, we don't offer it as a tool. It's not like you have a cloud that will automatically allow you to work on your own, but we do offer it as a service, right? The companies that want to automate tests, we do help them. I don't know if that was your question.
Não,
Yeah,
perfeito.
okay,
Deu
great.
pra entender.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Great work. Thank you. Thank you so much, Leonardo. Does anyone else have another question or comment? Okay, great. So if we have no further questions, Mariana, anything else that you'd like to add just to wrap up, something that maybe you forgot to mention during your presentation, you think could add some value to our participants? Well, just to wrap up, first, thanks a lot for joining us. I think it's super important that you're all trying to deliver with greater speed for your end customers and greater quality, so that they get the quality, the maximum quality that they could get from the system. And do reach out to us. Do send me an email if you have any question about a particular case, any kind of doubt. Maybe you don't know exactly where to start, how to, move on to the next step in the process. Apart from the tips that you already got from this, I'm putting myself available so that if you're interested, we can have a chat about these topics. So do send an email these days, and yeah, we can totally set up a meeting for next week and have a chat to assess each specific case, just like Miguel was saying, or Elias was saying, or maybe the case of some others that didn't mention them in this webinar, but maybe you have some questions and you're already giving this tool a try. So if you have any specific queries in the sense, do let me know. So thanks a lot to everyone. Thanks a lot, Aníbal, for managing this anytime. Yeah, and I'll definitely see you in November at the event. I'm also going to be there presenting. Thanks a million, Mariana, and thanks a lot to everyone for joining us. And as you know, this webinar and all our webinars are posted on our website, genexus.com/webinars. So we'll be seeing each other the next time. Thank you so much, and see you next time around. Bye. Thank you all.